Alright, hello and welcome to the stream that was formerly known as Salmon Info, but I decided I didn't like that name. So right now we're just gonna call it the channel title SuneikuRun. So welcome to SuneikuRun. I'm your host Suneiku, where we talk about mostly intermediate things to think about and focus on when you're trying to improve in Salmon Run, specifically on Splatoon 3. So today's topic, we are going to talk about Big Run, which was, I think it was last week. It feels like it was so long ago, but last weekend, I think, there was an event called Big Run in Splatoon 3 Salmon Run, where we got to play Salmon Run on Wahoo World. And not only that, but the focus of that was trying to get high scores in order to tier into a certain percentage, either top 5, top 20, top 50, and then there are prizes afterwards. So it was a really fun event. Uh, I enjoyed playing Salmon Run on Wahoo. While I'm doing this, let me just run some gameplay. I have to skip ahead. The volume down a bit. And this gameplay is just me playing the most recent rotation, which I think is still going today. Just some footage in the background, so it's not just silence and me talking. So Big Run was a lot of fun. I played with a lot of friends, scored really well. But there was a bit of controversy over the end results, aka the rankings, where the top 5% got the top 5% of players got 137 eggs, I believe. Which to me, as an experienced Salmon Run player, isn't that high of a number. But for others, it was a big shock, or for some, like how to get egg counts that high and things like that. And it just really makes you realize how big the how many people play Salmon Run and how many people like don't know about like strategies that just seem like very basic strategies for me and my friend group. So yeah, we're gonna talk about things that people can do if they didn't get to the tier that they wanted or the scores that they wanted, to improve, just general improvement tips again. I promise I won't talk about stop dying, because I always talk about that. We'll talk about some more specific things. But first, kind of want to get a few things out of the way with the backlash of it. Hi Virgo, welcome. So the main thing I want to get out of the way is this talk about RNG, which a lot of people felt like, oh, some players just got those high scores because of good luck, good waves, and stuff like that. And to that I want to say, yes, that's absolutely correct. There is a lot of RNG involved. Not everyone gets the same wave types. With the same spawns and the same weapons, especially since it was an all-random weapon rotation. So there is definitely a lot of RNG involved in Salmon Run. There always has been, and there always will be. But there is something to say about players who put a lot of time into the game, and not just in Splatoon 3 and Splatoon 2 as well, to put a lot of effort into not really manipulating the RNG directly, but taking what the game gives you and using that to your advantage, trying to turn the tables and not just say, oh, I just have bad luck. There's no way I can get a good egg score or beat this wave, etc., etc. So a lot of people have put in a lot of hours in order to do that. Let me give an example. Something I kind of wanted to talk about. Alright, so here's my profile. And here are my Splatoon hours so far. So 505 in Splatoon 3 and almost 4,000 hours in Splatoon 2. Now, I know a ton of people who have around this many hours or more in Splatoon 2, but I have to say that probably about maybe 70% or 75% of these hours is all Salmon Run. It's just Salmon Run. So, like, if it were 4,000 hours, 3,000 hours would be Salmon Run. And yes, that is a lot of time to put into Salmon Run, but I am getting close to the results that I hope for in Splatoon 3, especially during Big Run, while many others may have not put in so many hours into Splatoon 2 Salmon Run, and then suddenly got into Splatoon 3 Salmon Run and are just getting into it. So essentially, I'm a more experienced player compared to others who are just beginners. You may be familiar with Salmon Run, you may have played to your super bonus every rotation, but that's not really playing and learning Salmon Run. It's just scratching the surface. So not to put anyone down, but just to understand the perspective that a lot of people put in as many hours or more hours as I have into Salmon Run, which is why we have so much success with whatever RNG the game gives us. There are other factors as well. So yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way as a topic. Just the time you put in and the whole issue with RNG. And I guess even with the time put in discussion, as I said, not many people played very much of Splatoon 2 Salmon Run, but now they're enjoying Splatoon 3 Salmon Run, which I'm happy about. But yeah, the games are different in a way, but still the same. Oh, my video started over. No. I'll just jump ahead here. There was something else I wanted to talk about to get out of the way, but I can't remember anymore. And everyone already talked about how top players going overfishing aren't keeping you from getting scores, or even the fact that we're not keeping you from having fun in Big Run just because you didn't reach the tier that you wanted to. Like, we have no direct control over what scores you get. We didn't create the system of the top 5% get a golden Donkey Boy trophy or whatever. So there's no point in blaming top players for anything. And top players are getting way over 137 anyways, so hard to blame them for that. I'm using top players lightly, by the way, because I don't consider myself a top player. More of an experienced player, but there are other really, really incredible, amazing, strong players out there that I don't think I belong to be in the same group as. Not demeaning any of my skill, because I do consider myself a very skilled player. But when I say top players, it's just a general Salmon Run vet person who's experienced. Okay, I think with that out of the way, all the quote-unquote nonsense, we can talk about the next topic. So let's get to the point of why we should want to be here, which is I didn't do as good as I wanted to in the last big run. What are things that I can do to play better, get better scores, etc. One thing to note about some of these tips is that they mostly only work if you're playing with a full group of people that you know and that you can talk to or communicate with. Communicate with, or understand these concepts as well. I also forgot to note that a lot of the games I played where I got higher scores, me and my friends, we weren't using voice chat or comms. So that's also a factor that you can consider goes into it with experience. Comms are not as crucial in Salmon Run as they are in PvP, just because if everyone's on the same page with what to do and where things are and have good awareness, then everything should go smoothly anyways. But yeah, a lot of these strategies work well with friends, and in general, getting high scores is easier with people you know compared to just doing it freelance. Not impossible in freelance, but definitely an easier experience, so keep that in mind. Especially with this first one we're going to talk about, which is simply luring. So I'm gonna start pretty much from the basics. Let's see, so luring is, as it sounds, the act of bringing bosses that can come close to the basket closer to the basket. It's just as simple as that. Why do we do this? We do this because, well, back in Splatoon 2 Salmon Run, we didn't have an egg throw. Back in my day, there wasn't an egg throw, so if there are eggs that you left far away from the basket, it's harder to get back to because more enemies are going to spawn and chase you. There are snatchers that are far away, and just simply the distance it takes to get one egg at a time from, like, let's say like far docks or something like that. It takes way more time than to have a boss come closer to the basket, beat the boss by the basket, and then just dump those eggs very close by. It's just distance traveled, very simple, stuff like that. Now, the concept is simple, but the actual task is tricky because it really depends on the boss. Now, I wrote out simply how luring works for each boss, and to be honest, I really don't want to go through all of it. Maybe I can make a different video about how to lure each boss, but I can just show you a quick example. I already have the training room up, and we'll start with this most simplest boss to lure, the Moz. So the Moz will chase the closest player from when it spawns until it gets right under them and then tries to chomp them. And to lure this boss, you simply just have to let it follow you wherever you want it to go. So no matter where I go, it will follow me relentlessly. After it does its chomping attack, it will follow the player that's closest to them. Since I'm the only one in this room, it will always follow me, but if there is someone between me and the Moz, like let's say right now, then it would start chasing the other person. It's just whoever's closest. And as you know, Moz are very simple to defeat. Just throw a bomb in their mouth and then the egg should show up. So that's an example of me luring the Moz as close as possible to the basket, and I can easily dump these 3 eggs in. I don't have to juggle or worry about eggs from far away, even with egg throw. Egg throw is nice, but it still costs, I think someone said 67%. I just equate it to a bomb's worth of ink. So if you're throwing bombs, you can't throw bombs constantly, you can't throw eggs constantly, you have to wait. Even doing it from this close, throwing eggs just takes too much time. Much more time than just being right by the basket and dumping them in. Now, since I'm on Moz right now, we'll just quickly talk about a little strategy that you can do for luring it. Like, let's say you're trying to handle a bunch of things and you also have a Moz on you. If you stand on this grading area, it won't chomp you. It'll keep trying to chase you no matter what. As long as you're on grates, it won't do anything funky and try to chomp you. And actually, if you spend a certain amount of time on a graded area where a Moz can't get you, it will chase after the next closest person. So it could go after someone else, so that you can get the Moz off you completely. But yeah, staying up or staying on graded areas can keep Moz from getting you, so you can handle other tasks maybe. And then you could say, okay, now I want to take care of the Moz. So that's just a little fun fact, boss-specific fact. I can talk more about other bosses in that other luring video. But that's essentially what luring is. There are a bunch of bosses you can lure. There's only 3 or 4 that you can't, which are the flyfish, the stingers, the fish stick, and the big shot. At least as far as I know with the fish stick. Let me know if you actually can determine where they land other fish stick things. But yeah, all the other bosses are lurable in one way or another, including the slam and lids, which I did talk about a little bit in the previous video. They're all stuff that you can bring closer to the basket. Now, there is some tricks or some issues with luring, not just the fact of each different boss has a different luring type, or things to do to lure it, or luring distance, but there is something called over-luring, where if you bring too many bosses close to the basket, then you can't handle any of them, then that's over-luring. You don't want to do too much that you can manage just because, oh, I want to get the eggs close. So keep that in mind as well. You can only lure so much. Luring doesn't have to be absolutely right next to the basket because there's too many different bosses at the same time to make that work out perfectly. But the ones that you can get really close, like scrappers or Moz or flipper floppers, those are definitely ones that you want to get as close as possible when you can. So really basic concept, a little more difficult in practice. Luring can help you get better scores. And again, this pretty much only works when you're playing with a team, simply because your freelance teammates don't know what luring is. And as soon as they see the first boss, like let's say it's a scrapper that's coming from the shore, they'll run up to it at the shore and try to kill it as soon as possible. And then there you have 3 eggs really far away from the basket that you'll either have to juggle or you'll just have to abandon. So even just being mindful and focusing on luring can increase your scores so much. Like, you don't have to follow every single one of these tips to get decent scores. Like, we'll just use 137 as the benchmark. Like, even if you just practice simple luring, then getting over 137 should be no problem. And with everything, it takes time and practice, so don't expect to get it right away. Okay, so our next topic is also a big one. If Big Run is going to continue to be all random weapon rotations, understanding your weapon. I don't remember how many weapons are in the game, but there's a lot of them. And one thing I noticed when I was playing with a few different groups, there are some groups that are less experienced, and we were doing like voice communication and everything. And whenever we get a certain weapon, or whenever they would get a certain weapon, it's like, oh no, it's this weapon. Oh no, I'm gonna be useless. Stuff like that. And that's understandable. We can't expect everyone to be perfect with every weapon, but when they're saying that for like 90% of the weapons, it gets a little concerning. It's like, okay, well, how are we supposed to do well when you're not comfortable with most of the weapons? Uh, in PvP, most people have a main weapon, which is cool. But in Salmon Run, whenever a rotation comes up, it's pretty important that you're comfortable with at least 3 of the 4 weapons that you're given. So it's like going to work and then 90% of the tools that you have you're not comfortable with. It's like, well, then you can't really do your work, can you? Hi Mina, thank you. I hope you've been having a good day as well. So yeah, weapon familiarity is a big thing that I think can keep you from doing well in these all random rotations, or just in salmon run rotations in general, because you're gonna have to get one of these weapons, whether you like it or not. You're not gonna get the good RNG and get your main all 3 waves every wave. So it's good to kind of practice those weapons. So how can you practice those weapons? There are a few ways to practice them. The main way that I would say to practice these weapons that you're not comfortable with is if you see it in a salmon run rotation, don't shy away from the rotation. It's like, oh, I don't like that weapon, I'm not good at it. And then just not play it. Play that rotation. It's gonna be painful, it's probably gonna suck, but in time you'll get better with that weapon and understanding how it works, what enemies it's good for, what bosses it's good for, does it paint well, does it use a lot of ink, and just things like that, getting used to the weapon. And that's pretty much how I got used to the weapons. Back in Splatoon 2, whenever there was a new rotation with a new weapon, I actually made like a little Excel sheet document describing every weapon, which bosses it was good against, which ones it was weak against, stuff like that. And that's how I got used to each weapon eventually. There are still weapons that I'm not quite used to, but it's more like 2 or 3 weapons that I'm not a fan of compared to like 70 or 80% of the list of weapons that you could possibly get. And along with that, I'm gonna do something controversial in a second. You want to do window capture. Whoops, not that window. This one, yes. I don't have any weird tabs open, but do that part anyways. So I'm gonna do this tier list. Can't shape it to fit the screen, but that's okay. So we're gonna do another tier list, which is the controversial part. And there's only 3 tiers on this tier list. Hi Nines. You like Blaster in this rotation but suck in PvP. Yeah, Range Blaster is a lot of fun in Salmon Run, but it's really difficult in any of the other modes. Alright, can you see my mouse with this? Yeah, you can't see my mouse. Okay, so we're gonna have this tier list, and there's only 3 tiers on this. The weapons are good, not so good, and Grisco weapon. And so I'm gonna tell you from my experience weapons that I think are good in Salmon Run and not so good in Salmon Run. And I'm not gonna explain every one because there's too many weapons, but you'll kind of get the idea of what I'm doing here. So yeah, let's start. And some of these are arguable. Sometimes there's in-betweens, but I'm not gonna get into details. I'm just trying to prove a point. And there's no particular order of like certain ones are above others. It's just very simple. Stuff that's good, stuff that's not so good. This one's debatable. This one's also debatable. Just here, here. So you can probably kind of get the idea of what's happening. Pretty much most of the weapons in Salmon Run are very, I'm not sure if viable is the right word, but usable. Tent, not as much. Undercover. I won't do like the pencil, the Nova, and the big swig because I'm still not used to using them yet, so I can't give them a good assessment. But yeah, like a handful of these are debatable, but in my opinion, this is sort of the list. So the point of this is that with all these weapons, they're very usable in Salmon Run, even the ones that are in the not so good list. It's not that they're bad, it's just that they're not so good for Salmon Run, but they're still usable, still useful, depending on your weapon comp. So I guess it's kind of the harsh truth that's like, it's not the weapon that's bad, it's just you that's not comfortable with the weapon. I won't say you're bad, but you're not used to the weapon, you're not comfortable with it, so you don't know how to use it. For me personally, the only 2 weapons that I get really uncomfortable with are Slosher and Reflux. Not counting the new weapons, because of course I'm not comfortable with those yet. But yeah, so for me it's just 2 weapons. Octobrush, no, I'm comfortable with Octobrush, it's just not as strong as I want it to be. But yeah, Slosher and Reflux are the ones I'm not comfortable with. So if it's an all random rotation, few people heard me, I just go Reflux when it shows up. But I still do the best I can with that weapon. But otherwise, every other weapon, I'm just like, okay, cool. I'll take that. Undercover, sure. Ink Brush, yeah, you got it. H3, of course, I love H3. Nautilus, not my favorite splatling, but I can still use it. So hopefully you'd want to reach sort of that level of weapon comfort in order to be more, in order to increase your chances of success in these all random rotations, if that's going to be the continuous theme of Big Run. So, yeah, to practice those weapons, you can pick out a rotation that has that weapon that you're not comfortable with and just play it. I remember Glugos are really difficult for me, so I always try to play Glugo rotations. Um, there are a handful of guides out there that can tell you what the weapons are good at, weak at, stuff like that. I'm also working on some stuff to explain like weapon strengths and weaknesses, which may take forever, but I am working on it. Um, and of course, you can always take those weapons into PvP and get used to them if like the very basic functions of them you're not used to. You can always do that. But having the experience within Salmon Run, since the parameters are different, the enemies you fight are different, that will be the best place for you to improve on that. The smack talk on that. Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll ever win me over as a weapon, but I'm still, for the most part, comfortable using Nautilus when I need to in Salmon Run. Not so much in PvP. I tried my best, but I couldn't figure it out. So yeah, that covers understanding your weapon. The more weapons you're comfortable with, the better success you'll have with all of the RNG that shows up, including the RNG of getting a weapon that you may not like. Okay. Next topic, which is something that actually came up, I thought about recently. Is what should you focus on? And the short answer to this is just everything. This had an extended title, which was focus less on bosses and more on everything. And let me explain what that means. So of course, we want everyone to try to play objective. The objective is killing the bosses so we can get the shiny eggs and get the shiny eggs and put them into the basket and then get the quota and then get paid by Mr. Grizz, right? And of course, just like luring, it sounds just as simple as that, but there are a lot of obstacles in your way. One main obstacle that's more prevalent in this game than Splatoon 2, and that is the lessers. And we call them lessers, sometimes I call them the normie salmon, but it's the chum, the small fry, and the cohogs that you see pretty much every wave. People really are still underestimating how much chaos that they can cause. I think if people recorded a game where they died a ton of times and look back at how many times they died, a number of those times that they died, they were probably getting overwhelmed by the lessers, knocked into the water by them, just like getting your ankles torn off by small fry, stuff like that. And since they are causing such a problem, it's like so important to take some time, no matter what weapon you have, to help manage them. So like, let's say like this rotation, a blaster is in rotation. The range blaster is really good at handling the lessers. But that doesn't just mean you say, okay, well, so-and-so has range blaster, they'll take care of all the lessers. Like, no, that's not how it works. Everyone has to do a small part to contribute in taking care of the lessers. Like, let's say you're waiting for a boss to get closer. Lessers are also spawning, so just throw bombs at them. At least weaken them. The bombs will kill the small fry and weaken the cohawks and the chum and stuff like that. Because one thing I noticed playing with a less experienced group is that our hazard level wasn't too high and I was just doing my usual thing, but I found myself like surrounded by lessers like constantly, and I was trying to fight my way out of them, and I'm just like, man, why are there so many lessers around? Like way more than usual. And it's not because there's any extra like slamming lids or extra lesser spawns. It's just because my other teammates, and not blaming them or not saying it's their fault, but my other teammates aren't focusing on them at all. They're just like swimming right by them or only trying to hit bosses and stuff like that. So the amount of lessers that show up just causes so much chaos. This is especially an issue when it comes to like high tide on any map. Like if there's too many of them, you just can't move, you can't do anything. And so it's important to take some time to focus on them as well. I don't remember how much I focus on them in these games, but there are times where I was just, when everyone else was like waiting for a boss to come, I was looking around, I was shooting lessers and stuff like that. So yeah, they cause just as much chaos as the bosses do, so it's important to focus on them as well and take care of everything. Other things to focus on, painting. So if you have a weapon that's good at putting paint on the ground, you should like use that to actually take some time and put paint on the ground. There's a funny thing about in PvP where people pick certain weapons in their comp is like, oh yeah, I picked this weapon because it paints well. And then they get the lowest paint on the team because like, yeah, your weapon paints well, but you still have to focus on painting. It's not going to just paint itself. So if you do have a weapon that paints well, then paint with it. Like you don't always have to go for kills. You can look around the area, try to get paint on the ground and not just at the beginning of the waves. Giving yourself map control will help you move easier, will make it easier to defeat bosses and to turn in eggs and all that stuff. Yeah, so painting, also you have to focus on what your teammates are doing. Like if your teammates need help with defeating a boss, if your teammate is surrounded by lessers, you can use your weapon to help them get out of there, stuff like that. Knowing when your teammates are down is a huge thing that a lot of people still don't really notice. Hi Emmy, welcome. I've been practicing, or something that I always do is whenever I see a teammate down, I try to throw a bomb to them and time it just right so as soon as they're in their lifesaver thing, they're back up. Because any extended amount of time, or any small amount of time that they're out of the game causes problems for the whole team. So as much as I advise people not to die, or to die as little as possible, it's still gonna happen. But you have to make sure the time that they're down is like the least amount as possible. What you find difficult is seeing well-painted lessers. Somehow it was easier in S2. What do you mean by seeing well-painted lessers? They camouflage quite well. Oh, I think I know what you mean. Even in Splat 2, I would see like some pink object behind me and I think, oh, that's a teammate, and then I get whacked with a frying pan. It's like, wait, you're not my teammate. So yeah, seeing them can be tricky too. And yeah, not to call anybody out, but I was watching another friend playing during Big Run just to kind of observe what they're doing. I'm not sure if they're jokingly asking me for advice on improving or not, but I decided to watch anyways. And yeah, they were doing exactly that. Focusing a lot on just the bosses. There's like a ton of lessers around them, but then they just ignore them. In Splatoon 2, I used to call this rando vision because I noticed a lot of teammates would just ignore lessers, try to swim through an area where it's a ton of them, and then they get killed anyways because they get whacked by frying pans and stuff. And while it wasn't as a big deal in the last game just because there were so many less enemies on the ground, in this game, it's just so important to take care of them as well, and not just focus on the bosses. Like, sure, you can say, like, we need to get the bosses to get the eggs, but if you don't have the space to fight the bosses because of everything else going on, then you're not going to get the eggs either way. You might as well clear things out the best you can. Like right here, that Kohawk was nowhere near anything else, but I had to take care of it because I'm a range blaster. It just takes up too much space. Yeah, and that leads to my next topic. While you're focusing on everything, you also need to, as much as you can, keep moving and keep being productive. It's hard to explain this one because it just is as it sounds. You want to make sure you keep moving around. You're not sitting still, looking at things. You're actively moving towards or away from things. In order to keep things moving, to keep you moving, you don't want to stay still in one spot for too long, or it can cause problems. And being productive while you're doing that. There are times where things get so overwhelming that I see people just painting their feet and trying to escape from everything, which is fine because you want to make sure that you can survive. But you also need to try your best to get something done while you're running away, if that makes sense. Like, maybe if you had enough ink or something, throw a bomb at stuff that's chasing you that can stall scrappers. Just stalling scrappers if they're chasing you to give yourself some more space. While you're running from something else, you might be running towards a fly fish, so you can throw a bomb in to the basket, stuff like that. Just making sure that you continue actively doing things and not just sitting around and looking. Even with like a fly fish, if you're going for a fly fish by yourself, you have to throw a bomb in both baskets. What most people would do was, well, there's a lot of waiting involved with that. A lot of people, they'll see the fly fish, they say, okay, I'm going to take out this fly fish, and then they'll run up to the fly fish and sit and wait. And then the fly fish will do its thing where it hovers around for like a second or two, and then it opens up its basket, and then the player will throw a bomb into the first basket, and then they'll sit in their ink trying to refill for the next bomb for the next basket. And then they wait a bit, and then the fly fish is shooting missiles at people, and then they throw the second bomb into the basket. And they get the fly fish. That's great. It's great they get the fly fish, but they could have been using their time more productively. Like, as soon as you see the fly fish, you say, like, okay, the fly fish just spawned, but it's not going to open its basket yet. Let me look around the area to see what else I can take care of right now. Maybe there's probably some lessers that spawn with the fly fish, so let me see if I can handle those. Handle those before trying to take the fly fish out, so then I'll have space to throw the bomb and get ink. Maybe this area isn't well painted enough, so I'll paint up a little bit, and then I can throw a bomb in once the fly fish is there. Just things that you can do to prepare for it before it shows up, rather than just sitting for it. That's another issue with luring stuff. Like, people, the first boss you see may be a steelhead, and people just run up to the steelhead and wait. And it's like, they could be doing so many other things rather than just staring at this boss waiting for its cycle to begin. Like painting, clearing out other stuff, and stuff like that. And then once the cycle begins, you start attacking the boss. So, like, small things like that can help you be a lot more productive than just hyper focusing on one boss and saying you're going to take out this boss and making it into this whole event. Um, the whole salmon run experience is a very complex web of events, that things that you need to take care of and keep in mind, that you have to balance all at the same time. And it can't just be 1 point do something, 1 point do something, 1 point do something, point to point to point. It can't be that linear. It has to be like this web of different events that you can tie together and make things happen to be more productive, and to get better egg scores. Uh, so I was thinking about this when I was writing all this stuff, because I wrote a good few pages about everything that we're talking about. And I'm sure someone's gonna be like, wow, this is too much work, this is too much to think of for just a game, blah blah blah, etc. Um, I don't want to do all this stuff. And for me, I say, that's fine, then you don't want to get better at this game. It's like, these aren't, well, they sound complex maybe in word, but once you get used to them, they're really not that complicated. Very simple, straightforward things that start to work together into just one thing. And that's kind of the point of this video. Like, if you just wanted to play for fun and not get better, then that's fine. You don't have to watch this or take any of my advice. You can keep doing what you're doing. If it's too much work, I totally understand. This game is supposed to be fun. If this is not fun, then yeah, just don't do this stuff. But this is mainly for the people who do want to improve and try to play better and have a better experience in Salmon Run than not reaching their goals in Big Run, or struggling with freelance teammates or things like that. If you want to just keep blaming your teammates for everything, feel free, go ahead, but that's not gonna make you a better player. Just wanted to add that. That's probably one of the things stuff to get out of the way at the beginning, but wanted to make sure I got that. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into being able to get scores like 150, 170, 190, 200, and it's not just gonna happen magically. RNG is not gonna go in your favor mystically, and you'll stumble your way into like a 190 score. Improving ensures fun. Yeah, like if you're winning more and you're more successful in your games, at least for me, that's more fun for me than losing a lot. Just saying, oh well, it's my teammate's fault. Oh, I remember the other thing and stuff to get out of the way. So, like for the whole, it's just RNG, just good luck type of things for high scores. I challenge anyone. Well, I would hope someone who gets like a really high score in a normal rotation to upload that scenario and just have people try it out. It's like, yeah, we got high tide mothership and good RNG on these waves, and we got a high score, but it wasn't all just luck. Like, if you think it's all just luck, here's the scenario code, give it a shot, try to get a score that we got. I can guarantee you most people won't be able to get that score. And even if they do, after like multiple attempts, because the seed is the same, there's something to say about the people who did it on the first try when the seed showed up. It's like they didn't practice over and over to do everything perfectly. They were just ready for the scenario that was brought upon them. So maybe that would be a good reality check for some. I'm not strong enough of a player to reach those scores normally, nor do I have the time to practice that. But yeah, maybe that would be a good eye-opener for some people, like a contest, like whoever can like beat our score on this, you can win a prize or something. I don't know. You're still dying too much because overview missing? Oh, you mean like a top-down map? That'd be nice to have. Okay, I went on a tangent, but yeah. Bottom line, just keep being an active player if you really want your scores to improve. Stuff like that. The last point, just a general overall point, play more. Play more and learn. I don't believe in the whole practice makes perfect thing, but practice does help you improve and does make you significantly better than not practicing anything. So yeah, this whole idea that like, oh yeah, I play Salmon Run, I play to get my super bonus every rotation. That's like not playing a lot. I heard people saying like, I played up to 5,000 points and I could only score up to 100 eggs. And 5,000 points also isn't very much for Salmon Run. Like, just think about the how much time people put into PvP and ranking up to X rank. Like, as much as we complain that X rank is too easy to get into, it's still a time investment. And that time investment to rank up and get up to that high rank is like nowhere the equivalent of, let's say, playing like just up to your super bonus in Salmon Run. That's just like barely scratching the surface. That's in some cases not even doing one series in Anarchy series. So yeah, playing more is like the only way to get better. Getting reps in, getting hours in, that's what you're gonna do to get better. And not just playing just to play mindlessly, you also have to learn as well. Let me see. I hope my scores are still there, but I'm gonna see if I can pull them up in the game. So not the previous rotation, but 2 rotations ago on Sockeye, I played up to 9s, which was cool, and then I decided, you know what, since I'm at 9s, I might as well try to get some overfishing practice, because I don't play overfishing that much. So let me grab, see, that's at 54, keep that in mind. Yeah, back in the game. Let's see, it starts here. So starting here are the games that I played, and this is completely freelance. I didn't know anyone else was at 999, but we were playing, and we were getting hazard level max, which is hazard level 333%. That's the highest you can go, the highest you can get. And I decided I'm gonna go into freelance and practice. I got some really nice teammates, but we still struggled a little bit. When you watch overfishing videos, have a look at how many lessers are running around. The map is basically empty of them and covered in ink. Then you have time to run eggs, meanwhile using specials to your advantage. Yeah, exactly. So managing the lessers while you're doing everything else will be a cleaner map. You'll have a bunch of eggs on the floor that you can turn in without any issues of like people whacking you with frying pans. Alright, so yeah, here's a session that I did. I call it a session just because we stuck together for so long with random teammates to practice overfishing. So our first game looks really good, nice scores, not too many deaths, etc. The second game, a little more deaths. We didn't make the quota. I believe it was high tide. We were struggling with high tide, which is what I was noticing. But yeah, you can see the number of power eggs we got in, the number of eggs we got in, less than, well, about the same. But yeah, the deaths were not in our favor, which is good. We can't see specials here, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Another one, wave 3, number of deaths. This time I could have turned in more eggs. I was getting a lot of power eggs, but yeah. But eventually, we started figuring things out. More balanced scores, and we stuck together and were able to get a bunch of wins in a row at this level. So that was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from that too. So this gives you like a small snapshot of how you did. If I haven't explained it, or if you're not sure what all this means, by your name it shows you the 3 weapons you got in each wave. The golden egg is obviously how many golden eggs you turned in. The thing in parentheses is how many assisted eggs you helped with. So if you toss an egg to a teammate and then they turned it in, that counts as an assist. The one under that is the power eggs, which I believe is like highly underrated. The power egg indicator can show, not only indicate how many lessers that you worked on, but how many bosses you killed as well, because bosses also give power eggs. So if you feel like you're not contributing many power eggs as well, then that's something to keep an eye on. Like, am I really contributing to a lot of bosses and stuff like that? The top right symbol with the squid on it next to the ink, that is how many teammates you revived. So as soon as you revive a teammate, that goes up by 1. And the one under that is how many times you died and got revived. So specifically, got revived is the important part. If you die and then the wave ends and then you didn't get revived by anyone, it won't count as a death towards you. Which brings up farming, but I don't feel like talking about farming. So that's what explains those 4 things if you didn't already know. If you have the Nintendo Switch app, Nintendo Switch Online app, and you go to Splatoon 3 Salmon Run, you'll get a few more stats. One key one being, it'll tell you what the waves you had were. It'll tell you how many potential golden eggs showed up. It will tell you how many bosses you defeated. Under everyone's stats, it'll show you each of the bosses, how many spawned, how many were defeated, and how many you defeated specifically. And it also shows what special you had and when you use your specials. So there's a lot of good information there on the app that I wish it just showed in game so people can learn. But yeah, definitely when you're playing more and things go well or things go wrong, take a look at your stats, not just the how many golden eggs you got, like, oh, I got this many golden eggs, but the power eggs as well, how many times you died or revived people. The revived people one is also critical because it shows your awareness of how much you knew people were down, so you help them out and stuff like that. So you don't necessarily need like a capture card and a video to watch back your game to explain how well you did. You have a ton of information just here that can tell you all of that. Golden eggs are important. Deaths are important, but just pretty much everything is important to keep an eye on. Alright, we're waiting for shiny DC. So the bottom line is there's a lot of stuff that you can do to improve in Salmon Run, especially if you want to get like a high score in Big Run, go for the top 5%, etc. And as much as us in the community kind of had a laugh about all the people having issue with everything being RNG or just lucky and stuff like that, we genuinely do want to help you and support you get better. It's not just like a, oh, get good kid, figure it out on your own type of thing. We do want the community to grow and to be better. And because it makes it better for us. There's like, aside from Big Run, there's no real competition. I mean, even with Big Run, it's not really a competition. But in Salmon Run, there's no really competition. It's all just cooperation. We want everyone to play better. It makes our freelance experience better. It makes your freelance experience better. It makes the game a lot more fun when you're winning, or when you're winning, or you're not losing because you're fighting your teammates. You're losing because you're fighting the salmon. So this whole video was not with the intention just to tell you you're doing everything wrong, and like you're not smart enough. It's just essentially to teach you, because that's all we want. We want to help you learn, help you get better. It makes the whole community better. It makes the whole game experience better. And yeah. So if you do have any questions, you can ask me. There's a ton of streamers, ton of YouTube videos out there of people who want to help you improve, and you can ask them questions. But as long as you can kind of have, what's the word, a chip on your shoulder, and accept that there are things that you can improve on and things you don't know and you're willing to learn, then we'll be happy to help. If you just want to continue making excuses about teammates or weapons that suck, then by all means go ahead. I don't think you'll improve very much with that. Like, I was in someone else's stream and we were talking about future rotations, and one had GoodTuber and Reflux. And there was one person who just absolutely refused to want to play a rotation with GoodTuber. And I was trying to explain to them that like GoodTuber is very useful now. A lot of stronger players find the GoodTuber that's much improved since Splatoon 2, but they just were absolutely not having it. They just refused to accept that they can get better at GoodTuber. So as much as I wanted to continue to tell them that it's improved, it just seemed like they weren't interested in learning. So I just left it at that. It's like, okay, you can just enjoy not getting any better at GoodTuber just because you have a certain bias towards it. Where again, if you missed the chart that I put up, in my opinion, the weapons in the top of it are totally good, totally useful weapons, totally viable. The ones in the middle are still viable, but harder to use or not as strong. And then the bottom is just Grisco weapons, which are Grisco weapons. So, from a player with a lot of experience, in my perspective, if you're comfortable with these weapons, they'll do good on you. They'll do you well. Even the GoodTuber is up here. If your least favorite weapon is up here, that doesn't mean that the weapon is bad, it's just that you're not comfortable with using it. So yeah, this whole thing isn't to call anybody out or to make fun of anybody for not making the top 5% or whatever tier they wanted. It's to say, well, if you want to make this tier, let me help you. Ask me questions. Let me give you information so that you can be better, I suppose. But that's all I had to talk about today. If anyone had any specific questions right now, I'll give you a minute. If you'd like to ask them, feel free. But yeah, Salmon Run, lots of fun. There is a all random rotation coming up on Christmas weekend, which will have the Grisco Slosher, which is a fan favorite, I think. It's kind of controversial. Some people really hate it, some people love it. Which is a really, really strong weapon, the original quote-unquote broken weapon before the Grisco Splatana. So yeah, hopefully that will be a fun rotation. Another chance for you to practice all random weapons and improve. It's on Hydro Plant, which is a great map. And yeah, it should be a good time. Alright, so I'm not seeing any questions, so I think I will call the video here. For everyone who stopped by and watched, thank you so much. For anyone watching this video, like on YouTube or Twitch VODs, I appreciate it. And we'll end it here. So that is our SuneikuRun segment for today. I don't know if I have a future one planned. I think I did, but then I forgot. But until then, take care, keep practicing, and I will see you in another video.